I am Rachel Whitty-Pumford. I'm the Director of Programming for the Arkansas Arts and Fashion Forum. We are a nonprofit based out of Springdale, Arkansas, and the simple elevator pitch is that we exist to develop the fashion landscape in Northwest Arkansas. We do this through educational programming like this talk that you're about to hear. We also have designer support, like I was mentioning to Dr. Cheramie right before we started. We have a designer residency program that we kicked off today called Emerge. And we also support designers that participate in shows like Northwest Arkansas Fashion Week. So we are super excited today to have Dr. Lance Cheramie speak to us about sustainable fashion practices that we should be participating in. Dr. Lance Cheramie is an apparel, merchandising, and product development instructor in the Dale Bumpers College of Agricultural, Food, and Life Sciences School of Human Environmental Sciences at the University of Arkansas. Dr. Cheramie earned his PhD in public policy with a specialization in sustainability and addresses environmental issues in the apparel supply chain with his students. Dr. Cheramie also serves as a climate reality leader as part of the Climate Reality Project, responsible for educating, promoting, and creating sustainable solutions to help combat the climate crisis in order to preserve the Earth and the future of the next generation. He was recently involved in a training conducted by former U.S. Vice President and Nobel Laureate Gore to raise awareness about climate change and science and solutions. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you. It's great to be here. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Great. I'm glad to see you. It looks like a good bit of my students are here as well. It's good to see all of you. Yeah, so I just want to give them a little bit more of a briefing about what I do or what I did with the Climate Reality Leaders. So I am a Climate Reality Leader as part of the Climate Reality Project, as well as a professor at the University of Arkansas in apparel merchandising and product development. And I went through a training in August this year with Vice President Al Gore. And basically, we went through an intense training where we learned all about climate change issues around the world, really. We had guest speakers coming in. We broke up into different groups as we were there by region. So I was put into a New Orleans group. So in that group, we talked about, again, climate change in Louisiana. And I am currently a member of the Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas. I'm part of their group. And actually, this presentation is being, I believe, is being recorded on their site as well. So that's a little bit about myself. And I guess I'll go ahead and start the PowerPoint, if that's okay.
Perfect. And I just wanted to add, if anyone has any questions throughout the presentation, if you want to message them to me, Rachel Whitty-Pumford, I'm the host of the chat. I can ask them to Dr. Cheramie. That way we can ask it either throughout the presentation or at the end, depending on how it's flowing. So feel free to message those to me and I'll keep an eye out for them.
Either way, I don't mind. So let me just go ahead and share the screen here. Okay, so what I thought I'd do, just to let you know, basically we're currently in, with the Climate Reality Leaders, currently in the 24-hour reality countdown to the future. So that means this weekend, we have climate reality leaders all over the world giving presentations about different topics. Today, we had different leaders present on YouTube. So you can go back to YouTube later and look at some of the information that they might have given. But it wasn't just climate reality leaders today. It was the Pope, Prince William. We have actors. We have different politicians that went on talk about climate change, like Chris Hemsworth, Jaden Smith, Prince Royal. So it was a big event that's happening today. 24 hours in, I believe, at 3 or 4 o'clock today. But continuously, you have climate reality leaders presenting throughout tomorrow night, just so you're aware of that. So my presentation is basically going to be about environmental issues in the apparel industry. So you might wonder, okay, why in the world do we care about environmental issues in the apparel industry? I mean, I like to shop. I want to buy. I see what I want. I want to get it. But, I'm interested in learning, not only about what the clothes are in the store, but where did they come from? And what kind of scenario, I guess you could say, is going on within the countries that manufactured the product before they were shipped to the United States. Now, I love clothing and fashion just as much as the next person. It tells us about who we are, not just who we are, but it tells us about who we want to be overall. The thing is that the clothing that we wear becomes disposable. So I'm not sure if the average customer might think about, okay, what goes on with the clothing after it's worn? They discard it. It might be thrown in the trash. It goes straight to landfill. Um, you know, so there's various things that happen throughout the life cycle of the clothing itself. So there was one point where clothing was made to last a lifetime. But now, as you can see, with this fast fashion, clothing might not last. A t-shirt, a garment, a pants, whatever the case may be, might not last more than just one season. So I'm going to try to stick with that topic during the conversation. And for the most part, I'm going to concentrate on water pollution. I'll talk about air pollution here and there in different countries around the world per se. So let's start with, what do our clothes say about us? So, like I said before, when we buying clothes, do we know or do we care about what it is or where they came from? So some people don't know. And I see my fashion students on here, and I noticed some designers on this Zoom call as well. And I feel like they probably are aware or consciously aware of, what's going on within the industry. But some people, the average consumer, may not know. And you know what? The industries out there, they like it that way because it's more like corporate bliss if the customer doesn't know, because the more you don't know, the more people are going to buy. So I think that we humans overall have a better chance of being here for the long haul if we take our shirt off the back along for the ride. So, like I said, this presentation is mainly going to be about environmental issues. So, but I want you to be aware of a few things, and I'm going to start with the planet Earth. All right. So this picture here is called the blue marble. All right. It's probably the most photographed picture that there is in the world. It was taken in 1972 from the Apollo 17 mission. And I just wanted to show it to you because, as you can see, well, clearly see, we're a blue planet. And overall, we're going to stick with water a little bit. Of all the Earth, 97% of it's saline, 2% of it's locked up in ice, and about 1% is in lakes and rivers. And a lot of that water is really not accessible. It just depends on where it is. So when it comes down to it, a very small amount has to accommodate not only the needs of humans, but also other needs, agriculture, industry, several types of industries. Therefore, I think that we need to treat water basically in a more respectable manner. So again, we're going to we're going to look at different aspects of water use around the country dealing with textiles. All right. So one question to ask: where in the world do our clothes come from? One thing or one project that I usually give my students in one class or another is I say, okay, what I want you to do is go through your closets. And I want you to report back to me next time we meet. Give me a list of all the countries that are represented in your closet. And sometimes it's just amazing to me how, collectively, even myself, can come up with at least 20 different countries or more that's just in our closet. So then I started thinking, okay, now wait a minute. What does that tell us? What's going on? Think a little bit further. What's going on in these countries that these clothes are getting made from? So Rachel, what do you think? Do you walk to your closet sometimes and think about where your clothes are coming from? Oh, unmute yourself.
Sorry about that. Unfortunately, it's not something I do often enough.
You see what I'm saying? So the average consumer may not be aware of all these things. So I want to make you just think about it. When you get a chance, go ahead and do that. Just check it out. Okay, so we're going to look at this. We're going to look at a few different areas and just kind of dissect it somewhat. So now, and that's another thing to think about as far as clothes are concerned is there's different types of sustainability. What about the social sustainability aspect? So, at one point in the United States was making clothes, but then through several trade deals and whatnot, all of that clothing production manufacturing went offshore. So then companies started looking for better pricing. Where can we get the most bang for our buck? And how little are these workers going to get paid in most cases? I want to show you a little chart and just think about something here. All right, so let's take a look. All right, so this is a chart of different countries around the world here. These dollar figures, of course, are listed here. So let's just look at one. I'm going to talk about several of them, but let's look at Bangladesh for right now. So it says $95. Okay, the average worker makes $95 a month in working in the textile industry. So then you have to think, all right, can we survive on $95 a month? That might be a little challenging. They should at least make double that. I mean, so, and as you can see, it goes up here. China's this is all monthly salaries. Okay, $326 a month. These for textile workers. So, but where are we going to start? And look at different countries. So we're going to start with China. So China here. China is the most populous country on earth with about 1.3 billion people. As you can just about imagine, stress to supply clean water is almost insurmountable. Rivers in China are floating disaster areas. 70%, that's a huge number, 70% of China's lakes and rivers are contaminated. What happens there? It leaves very little fresh water for people who rely on them, right? So yeah, China was once an impoverished country, but now what do we have? It's the most known factory producing country in the world. It exports more goods than any other country, but it does come at a high price. And that's what we're going to talk about. What is that high price of fashion or textiles within different countries? So let's kind of stay on China just a little bit and let's talk about different rivers and waterways. The Li River in South China. Of course, we talked about the fashion industry, but the industry itself is one of the key suspects in the destruction of Chinese lakes and rivers. Rachel, can you imagine yourself swimming in that lake?
No, because I don't know what that purple foam is.
It's very scary, right? This, the dumping of chemicals has poisoned the rivers and the groundwaters. And there's people swimming in this. Millions of people, they're exposed to this kinds of pollution every day. And you know what? The problem is they're getting sick from it. So we have people getting cancer and other illnesses, other diseases, just because of what's happening in this part of the world. Now, you know something? Even chemical released into these waterways, and this is just bizarre, but it can change the sex of a fish in the water. So it's just alarming. So yeah. So it's just an amazing thing that or an awful thing, I guess you could say, that this is actually happening and still today. Now then think about this, sticking with China. So let's say that just one chemical released in China, one of, let's say maybe 800 at least chemicals, could travel around the world and hit Canada. Once it hits Canada, you might have polar bears drinking this water, and actually chemicals have been found in the body of polar bears just by the chemical being released in China. So, you know, not all companies are bad, they're not. But there's a lot of companies kind of doing things in secret because the damage they have done is so huge. But you know what? As consumers, I feel as students, as designers, we will be demanding more of our clothes. Where do they come from? What are they made from? And you know what? The industry will eventually have to accommodate those demands.
Mhm.
So there's some companies, there's some organizations out there that are doing terrific jobs. Um, and there are organizations that are helping these companies, like the Sustainable Apparel Coalition. That's one. They have numerous members, and they help companies dissect what are they doing as far as their environmental issues. So that's one. The TSC, Sustainable Consortium here in Arkansas, that's another company that helps companies to deal with or dissect what are they doing as far as environmental issues are concerned. But still, there are some companies that are not doing much of anything. So, and as a matter of fact, when you look, let's say at a website, a company's website, and you find their CSR report or their business report, and you start looking at things and you start finding things about what they're doing as far as the environment is concerned. If you just see that they're using LED lights, they're using water saving toilets and sinks, and they're LEED certified and nothing else, we have a problem. We need to be doing more than just that. Now, again, there are companies that are doing excellent jobs. Walmart here in our backyard has an entire section on their site about sustainability. I'm familiar with some of the sustainability people that work there. They're doing terrific jobs, but there's others as well. So that's a little bit about China. Well, let's move on over just to investigate another country. Let's look at Bangladesh, especially Dhaka. Dhaka is the largest city in Bangladesh, and you know what? It's one of the dirtiest as well. The toll of being the second leading exporter after China can be seen from the riverbanks. I mean, it's just awful. So let me show you some pictures, a little bit about one of the rivers. And the river I'm going to show you is the Buriganga River. It's right here. Now, on the surface, you may say, okay, maybe that's not too bad. But you know, if you look up close, that water is not blue. That water is basically red. So what does that tell me? Maybe that was the color of the year for making clothing, because that's the color of the dye. Now, there's other issues with pollution besides human waste. Manufacturers of cheap clothing, they have to take responsibility to some of this. And I'll list a couple of chemicals that you might find in there. Chemicals such as cadmium, chromium, and other elements such as, let's say, mercury. They are carried into the river streams and go down to the groundwater, and it does again propose a harmful threat to humans. So it's very polluted. And in some cases, I think it was in 1995, Bangladesh tried to enact some sort of policy as far as industries and the release of effluents. But I don't know how these companies got away with it, but it was somehow disregarded, and some of these people are still getting away with things like this. So I think more enforcement of policies might need to take place as far as this is concerned.
Mhm.
So that's one example, the Buriganga River, Bangladesh. So then think about this. So what I just showed you, so China, Bangladesh, so then we think about, okay, so what's going on or what's happening on the fashion runway and in most of our closets, for the most part, may have gotten its beginnings in Bangladesh. And you know what? Even the people in the factories that work there, a lot of them think that it is their fate to work for that particular company. So now I'm talking about what's going on in the waterways, but then I want people to realize, not only what's going on, the dumping of the pollution, but what's actually happening to the people who work in the factories, because they're getting exposed to these chemicals every single day that they work there, and they work long shifts. So again, this is just pointing out or calling out something that you might not realize or maybe not have thought about.
Mhm.
So when we think about this, we have to ask the question, does the consumer play a part in all this? Rachel, what do you think?
I mean, I feel like we do because we're allowing it to happen. Like you mentioned, the Bangladeshi workers were earning only $94, $95 a month. So they don't necessarily feel empowered to leave their company And so if we continue supporting those companies and they continue to provide them low paying jobs, then it just perpetuates the cycle.
Yeah, exactly. So the low cost clothing comes at a very high price. The consumer can control this by what? Their spending patterns. You're right. So we have to be aware of that. And as you can see, I listed some fast fashion, H&M, Old Navy, Forever 21. So I mean, imagine they're coming out with I mean, numerous clothing. They have numerous seasons per year that they bring coming out with new product. I mean, you can walk into like an H&M, and they're constantly changing because new product is constantly coming in. So again, then I started thinking, okay, so what's happening, continuously happening, to this clothing? Now I know you might look at that H&M website, and they're starting to do some things as far as sustainability is concerned. And I believe that they may have a fashion collection just built on eco fashion, I believe. So you can see tidbits here and there of companies like this, fast fashion companies, because I mean, what's going to happen if you stop buying from them? They're going to completely go out of business, right? So these are some things that you might want to, anyway, just information to think about, what's going on behind the scenes. This was kind of what I'm showing you. All right. So we looked at China, Bangladesh. Now let's go to India. All right. India. India has some of the most sacred, excuse me, but also dirtiest rivers in the world as well. And again, I'm going to select or kind of highlight a river in India. So let's look at the Ganges River. Now, the Ganges, now you can take a look at this. Okay, so you see all this pollution. We see the textile chemicals coming in. We see someone in the river itself surrounded by some debris here and there. So, the Hindus believe that the water cleanses people from their sins for the most part, right? But there are issues or problems, not just textile problems, but as you can see, that's some pollution that's happening man-made here and there as well. So, but due to the combination of rivers, chemicals in rivers, the water used for basic clothing, drinking, should I say, and cooking leads, just as the other rivers, leads to waterborne illnesses, the same thing. So, and this is actually the second picture here. So they may have performed the ritual, but some of the ritual debris stays in the water as well. So there are issues in the Ganges as well. So these are things to just take note of with the Ganges. So another river that's a little bit polluted in the world. So information just to take note of. Okay, then again, we have in India, Kanpur. And I put a couple of shots here, but just so you know, a little bit of background, Kanpur, basically one of the largest industrial towns in North India, supports the largest textile leather processing as well, not just textiles, but leather processing as well, and is among the top 10 cities with the worst air pollution. I mean, it's awful. But the air pollution may also be from the petrochemical industry, the chemical industry, the mineral industry, and also maybe from vehicles from road dust. So we have water pollution, we have air pollution dealing with the industry as well. So I thought to kind of stay a little bit on air pollution and just give you a tidbit of information there. So worldwide, air pollution kills 9 million people every year. I mean, it's huge. And then just to take it a step further, here, air pollution particles are damaging the hearts and brains of people living in polluted cities. The particles have been found in children as early as 3 years old. So, then you got to think, what's causing all this pollution? Again, pollution from extracting and burning fossil fuels isn't only driving the climate crisis, it's also, again, creating a public and environmental health crisis worldwide. So the burning of fossil fuels can cause a lot of pollution here as well. I got a few statistics here. Air pollution such that is produced from burning fuels such as coal, oil can expose people to small particles pollution, 2.5 microns that go into the lungs, of course, causing all kinds of asthma type issues, cancers, diseases, all types of things. Now, let me just show you this. Here is the deaths attributable to air pollution. Now, mainly I've been talking to you about India and China, right? So notice that those two countries are in the really bright red. So we're seeing deaths per year over 150,000 in just the countries that I've been talking about, the China and India. So if you look all the way around the world, we can kind of see who's the lowest as far as pollution is concerned. Well, we have Canada here, our neighbors to the north, United States right under it. But anyway, as we can see, I just want to point out that the ones I'm talking about are the ones in bright red. So we can see that it's not just water pollution. It's also air pollution that's causing problems and issues from the industry, textile industry, to people who live and breathe in these particular areas or regions. All right, so now let's look at another one. Let's go to Indonesia. All right, Indonesia. Again, I'm gonna focus in on a river here. That's the home of the Cheramie River. Now, India, as you can see, now I put this for you to kind of do a little bit of a comparison. Australia is here, Indonesia is right above it. Just an FYI, so you know, to see where it is. Now, as you can see, it's not very big, so it's not as populous as China and India, but it is still in the top league with a population of over 200 million. So let's look at the Cheramie River, and it's kind of looking some of the things that maybe is going on in that area of the world. All right, this is the river here, and as you can see, it's kind of more or less kind of split in half with a lot of pollution and debris on the side and the banks here. Again, it's one of the most polluted rivers in the world, and it does serve, as I stated before, a large population of people. Industrial waste from 2,000 factories just in this little area have led to an increase in mercury levels that go far and excess the legal limits. The river is dirty and polluted from all sources. So as you can see from the picture here too, and textiles, of course, is one of the major contributors. Now, some of the companies that you might recognize have done, or maybe still do, some business in this particular area. The Gap is one of them. You might want to take a look at, then you can do your own investigation or research. Adidas, another one. So, but there's others. So again, who are these companies and why are they allowing all of this to happen in these particular areas of the world? So I went through a few different areas. So I ended off with Indonesia. But you know, a lot of students I have, and maybe some designers as well too, are kind of interested or focused in, and I do have some students currently working on projects dealing with sustainability in denim. So I kind of want to take a little bit of not a detour, but a little bit of a focus into one particular product. So let's take a look at the denim industry and what's going on within the region or world of denim, more or less. So let's stick with denim for the time being. All right. So the United States used to be the denim capital of the world, I guess you could say. But things due to, I guess you could say, trade deals, NAFTA, of course, brought companies or companies to think about, like I said before, to look for other sources of production. Right now, the denim capital of the world is in Xinjiang, China. All right, so these are just some pictures I put up there. This is a polluted waterway here. As you can see, of course, obviously the color is blue. This is a worker working in a factory. And this is just the outside of the building where they have to keep the fans on. And as you can see now, if this is coming out of the building, then you have to think and wonder, this guy here, not by himself, is exposed to all of these chemicals within the industry as well. Now, just to give you some sort of background about the denim industry and this particular area, Xinjiang, China, 1 in 3 pairs of jeans sold globally is made in this particular industrial town. The factories there in this area produce 300 million denim articles a year. That's a lot, employing approximately 220,000 people. That's about 2/3 of the denim clothing made in China is produced in Xinjiang. So now you got to think too. So in the United States, when it was in the United States, environmental regulation was a little bit more harsh. But when we go overseas, you know, things are not as enforced, I guess you can say, as they could be. So it could lead to problems. Fast fashion, like I said, is a big problem. So as people, as consumers, we can no longer just sit by when the planet and people are suffering just for economic gain. Everything I showed you is causing problems. You, as a company is responsible for how they make that product. I think that they should be aware of what and how they're producing different garments or articles of clothing. All right, so I want to show you this a little bit. Now, Levi Strauss, of course, one of the top jean producers, they did a little study, a life cycle of a jean assessment. So I just kind of want to bring you through that life cycle assessment and kind of show you a little bit about some of their findings. So let's take a look at that. Life cycle of a jean. Levi's did this study on just one pair of 501 jeans. And let's kind of just take a look at some of the results of that. Okay, so now again, we're just talking about one pair of 501. This is what they found out. It takes almost 920 gallons of water. Okay. It takes 400 megajoules of energy. It expels 32 kilograms of carbon dioxide. So let's kind of think about this carbon dioxide just for a minute here. Climate change is primarily a problem because there's too much CO2 in the atmosphere for the most part. The carbon overload basically is caused when we burn fossil fuels like coal, oil, or cut down and burn forests. I mean, Rachel, what do you think about what's going on in California?
I mean, the state's still on fire.
It's on fire. So things such as burning forests causes problems as well. Now, there are many heat trapping gases for the most part, but CO2 puts us at the greatest risk of irreversible changes if it continues to accumulate unabated in the atmosphere. So this is going to be a problem for us. So just so you can see this. Now, what is this equivalent to? So Levi's did this study. It said this is what happens for one pair 501. So this is equivalent to this: driving 78 miles, powering a computer for 556 hours, or running a garden hose for 106 minutes. Can we run out hoses for that long? That's a long time, 106 minutes. That's a lot of water. One pair of jeans, So collectively, now look at this beautiful picture I'm about to show you, right? Nice Olympic-sized pool. Just so you know, in a single year, 1 year, one large fashion brand approximately uses the equivalent of, Rachel, can you believe this? 43,000 Olympic swimming pools of water.
I was shocked at 43. The 1,000 was much bigger.
Yeah. Exactly. I want to jump in, but anyway, I can't do that. But the textile industry is one of the largest consumers of water in the world, using 3.2% of all water available to the human race every year. So I just wanted to emphasize here, what's happening with water and how is it being used and how much is being used for the most part. So it's massive, right? But I talked about all these things, these issues, these problems with the environment, but everything is not down here, now downhill. there are solutions and there are companies out there that are doing things that are pretty impressive. So I'm going to show you some solutions and maybe how they, what they're doing. All right. So let's take a look. I have solutions here. All right. So we talked about pollution in rivers and waterways and etc. So I just want to give you some examples of what may have happened and what different parts of the world may have done to better themselves or better the rivers. All right. This is the River Thames, and this is in London. So, first of all, the toxic effect of industrialization. You would think, by what I showed you, you might think yourself, "Good Lord, how can people survive?" It appears irreversible. You know what? But history has proven that a biologically dead river can be reversed. All right. Now, like I said, this is the River Thames. 40 years ago, in this river, there was no sign of life. There was so much pollution that there was no fish, there was nothing. The way they did was massive conservation efforts and strict regulation implemented in London due to the dumping of toxins allowed the entire river to regenerate. So it's possible to take a dying river and have it regenerate. But of course, cleaning up has to be done. Enforcement of policies have to be done, but it is possible. So I just want to give you some positive effects. Now, what about, we're kind of stuck with the denim industry still. There's a company in Italy called Pure Denim. So here's just a little tidbit of information about some of the things that they're doing. They're focused, of course, on environmentally minded different projects, okay? So the denim comes from an entire redesign of the production system. It's inspired by, and some of you who are in designing or students might be interested in the circular economy. They're inspired by the circular economy. Of course, that combines technology and materials to minimize waste. As a fixing agent, they use something called chitosan, and it's a polymer created from the shells, like of crabs, shrimp, etc. So they created a process to where it's more efficient. The dye stays on the garment better by using this, causing less environmental stress. So it's very interesting to read about. So when you get a chance, take a look at Pure Denim and look at all the things that they're doing. And that's one company. Another one you might want to be familiar with is Genealogia, and this one is in Spain. The first one, sorry, was in Milan. This one's in Spain, and they're doing all kinds of things with ozone technology. Basically, innovative, multicultural company, 20 years of experience in development of sustainable solutions. And I'm just going to show you some of the things that they have here. They're shooting for zero contamination, and they have processes through their G2 lab, more or less. G2 is the first ozone treatment for continuous fabric, providing eco-efficient alternative to fabric finishing. So they use that. As far as, now take a look at this first picture. In some of the factories that are producing denim in, let's say, China, whatnot, some of the, I guess you could say, some of the whiskering in the jeans, or some of the fading jeans, or whatever the case may be, the processes, they're actually using sandpaper in, let's say, in China factories that I talked about. This company designed it to where they can have the same effect just by using laser technology. So it's a very awesome process, I guess you could say, but they can achieve the same things through ozone technology and laser technology for the most part. Now they compiled a chart just to kind of show you some differences between traditional processes and what they're doing. So let me show you that. All right, so average consumer consume using traditional finishing processes, then average consume using a Genealogia sustainable process. And then they did a side-by-side comparison. As you can see, their processes are much less, are much more efficient, I guess you could say. The savings overall using their production facilities or company, saving 71% water, 33% energy, and chemical savings of 67% as well. So now, and they're not just, of course, the headquarters are in Spain, but I want to show you this. They're pretty much, all over the place for the most part. They are in the USA as well too, subsidiaries there, just to kind of show you a little bit about what they do. And you might want to look them up as well too, because there's so much information on this company and the processes is just, just awesome. But what else can we do? So what else can we can we do anything to reduce fossil fuel burning, or what about as far as energy is concerned? Well, of course, you might read this in some companies, and this is massive. These are solar panels and the use of solar energy and some facilities. And solar energy has of late become more economically efficient. This is in India, and this is their solar park. And just to give you a little bit of information about solar energy, the technology itself has been around since about the 70s. But of course, falling prices have made it more visible. Major greenhouse emitters like China, like we talked about before, United States, of course, in India, we talked about, are taking the lead in using solar panels. And by the end of 2019, of last year, at least 39 countries use solar capacity. So that's one solution, right? Instead of renewable energy is a solution. So besides solar energy, and when you're looking at some of these companies, that when you start researching and seeing what they're doing as far as their sustainability reports, they should be mentioning something like this, solar energy and wind energy. So these are things to take note of as well. What companies are doing, here globally, wind could supply worldwide electricity consumption 40 times over. I mean, that's huge, definitely. So with demand for electricity growing and the overall the climate crisis deepening, the world itself needs a viable, cost-competitive replacement for dirty fossil fuels. And these are some things that they can do. Wind energy, again, excellent alternative powering our lives without destroying our planet. So overall, we got wind energy, we got solar energy. Just a little bit of information. Employment in wind power itself, primarily offshore projects, supports 1.2 million jobs. That's a lot around the world. China, largest employer, 44% of total jobs. In the US, and you add that, wind employment grew 8% in 2018. Now wind employs 114,000 Americans in total. So very viable area is centered around wind energy itself. So basically, I gave you kind of an overview of what goes on in different countries as far as the fashion industry is concerned. We talked about what goes on behind the scenes for the most part, polluted waterways, and how are this happening? How are the people that are affected by these waterways? And then, of course, air pollution. What's happening as a result of air pollution? So I think as an industry, we as the textile and apparel industry can definitely do a better job of scouting out some stuff like alternative sources. Like I said, some companies are doing excellent jobs, and I encourage you to take a look at what others are doing, or what companies are doing as far as their livelihood and the product is concerned. Before I end, I want to give a little bit of a plug to an organization. And that organization is the AATCC, the American Association of Textile Chemists and Colorists. And if you are a student in the apparel department at the University of Arkansas, I would highly encourage you to join this organization. They do lots of different things. There are scholarships available for students, design competitions, merchandising competitions. If you are a designer, we have an Ozark section that I would encourage you to join as well. And this is just one of the topics. They do many different types of webinars. There's a lot of information that of course there's a fee. You might want to go to the site, aatcc.org. This is just one of their topics that they're going to be discussing soon, which kind of ties into this a little bit. Sustainable topics, textile affluent, how to deal with it. So that just one thing I want to point out. So I'd highly recommend that you do investigate that. Last but not least, thank you all for attending. Rachel, if you want to, if there are any questions, I'll stop sharing and I'll let you take over.
Perfect. We've got a couple questions. We'll go through those, but if anyone has any questions, again, you can message them to me and I will read them off. One of the questions that we got from Facebook was, I'm wondering what kind of real change we will see in the next 2 to 3 years. Will the change be sufficient enough that we can make a difference? And how will this impact businesses / ourselves?
Well, one of the things you're talking about the next 2 years?
Next 2 to 3.
Okay. Well, we have a presidential election coming up, right? November 3rd. I would highly recommend that you all vote and vote for the candidate that you feel will probably make more of an impact for the climate into itself. I think that it's going to take more than 2 years to make a definite impact on what I've shown you. It's going to take a while, but I think that there are steps we need to take. Number one, vote. Number two, I think we need to re-enter the Paris Climate Agreement. And I think we need to get everyone on board with that. It's going to take a while to get things back, just like the river did in the River Thames, but it's doable in 2 years. That might be pushing it, but I think we can do it. I think it can be done.
Do you know how that will impact businesses, I guess small and large? For example, will it impact the mom and pop boutiques who are buying, 50 of a piece versus, Walmart who buys things on the thousands or hundreds of thousands?
Well, I'm guessing that most of the designers here, and correct me if I'm wrong, but are more interested in the slow fashion than there is fast fashion.
Yeah.
I think if the consumer is more aware, and again, this is the point here, and we talked about at the beginning, does the consumer care? Does the consumer really know? If we can advocate for that consumer education, I think that a mom and pop organization will survive, because I believe that these mom and pop, again, correct me if I'm wrong, that their designs, the smaller organizations or boutiques, whatever the case may be, are using more of an economically friendly way to make clothing. And I think if they're able to create those types of garments, I think that they can be profitable.
Another question that we got was, a few years ago, raw denim was a trend. Is raw denim better for the environment than your traditional denim?
Well, overall, yes, but like I said, some of these companies are also doing like Genealogy and Pure Denim. They have used innovative technological ways to recreate some of the same processes that you see other companies, like let's say in China, using, as far as, because they're using a lot of chemicals.
Mm.
These other companies that I mentioned, like the two I mentioned, they're using other techniques that are friendlier to the environment, which may be just as good as using raw denim. So I think it's possible to do both.
Another question is, what is the most important thing we can do as consumers to be more sustainable and reduce waste?
As far as clothing is concerned?
Yes. Well, let's do clothing and then in general, I guess. We can do both.
Okay. Well, number one is, like I mentioned before, we want to definitely be aware of what we're buying and how much we are buying.
Mm.
One of the things I ask my classes is, I'd say something like, how many pairs of shoes do you own? You know? And I've went up to with students saying 50 to 100. Do we really need that many pairs of shoes? So I think we need to be thinking and be mindful about our purchases. Okay. As far as the environment is concerned, there are things you can do as a whole in your house. And this is things I didn't touch on because I want to focus a little bit more on the pollution part. But what about recycling, reusing? What about some of the designers here? I'm sure you are using some sort of repurposing denim or whatever the case may be and turning it into different objects. So you can be thrifting. I think all those are types of things that you can do to be more environmentally friendly.
Awesome. And then you guys have a couple more minutes to submit any questions, but I actually have a question.
No, sure.
Something we're looking at doing at the Arkansas Arts and Fashion Forum over the next year is booting up microbatch manufacturing in Northwest Arkansas. And so we've been looking into the dye sublimation printing process.
Okay.
Do you know if that is an environmentally friendly option, or should we be looking at other avenues of producing our own patterns?
I would look into your own.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, first of all, do your homework.
Yeah.
But I think I would lean towards doing my own,
Mm-hmm.
and then make a comparison. That's what I would do research first, and then. But I'm leaning towards your own.
Okay.
For now. But
That's
again, I
what
have to
we've
see
been
both.
looking into. I was like, we're not too far in the process yet, but we've been
Okay.
looking into the options and talking to local retailers and manufacturers who've been using it. And it
Yeah.
seems like it'd be okay because it's on paper that transfers
Yeah.
over, but I don't know the
That's.
long-term process versus like
Mhm.
screen printing where you're running dyes through the waterways. We're trying to avoid that.
Well, I guess I would invite you. On Monday, I have a person from AATCC
Mhm.
who will be speaking to my class about technological solutions in textiles.
Oh, awesome.
So if you want to join, I can send you the link
I will be there.
and be part of the conversation. Okay.
It's like I'm in. I'll take it.
Okay, I'll send it to you.
Let's see. Another question we have is, I'm assuming it's a Dale Bumper student because they're asking about agriculture. So something that agricultural industry has been dealing with is fertilizers draining into waterways.
Absolutely.
And the government has been working to hopefully stop those processes. I'm hoping, I guess. That's me adding that in.
Okay.
Is there a similar option that's happening for the textile industry if it does come back more into the United States versus Bangladesh, China, India?
You mean the textile option of manufacturing coming back to the United States?
I'm going to extrapolate it. I think what they mean is if the textile industry comes back, are there already like policies in place to prevent people from dumping dyes into the waterways if it comes back on a scale where we become the denim capital again?
I would say no.
Okay.
Not entirely. So we have to be thinking about our administration. Okay. I don't want to advocate. So no, not entirely.
Okay.
Not yet, but it's possible if the right thing happens. Yeah.
Okay. Where they make environmental protections for textiles in addition to agriculture and things that
It
are
could
done
be.
in
Yeah,
waterways.
it's definitely.
Okay. All right. Well, that was the last question I had. So thank you so much
Oh,
for
thank
joining
you.
us. We appreciate you doing this, and we'd
All
love to
right.
have you again sometime.
Oh, thank you. I love to. It was a great time. Yeah, thank you all for joining, and y'all have a great weekend. And class, if you're in my class, I'll see you Monday.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Have a great
Take
weekend.
care. All right. You too. Take care. Bye-bye.